Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Hope everybody is off to a great start on this Thursday. Lucas Panzica and I, we are with you until 1 o'clock. This is my Friday, bud. You're me tomorrow. You excited?
Thrilled.
What do you guys got anything fun planned? I know you and Bert tend to enjoy yourselves more when I'm not here to bog you down.
Well, Jackson will be hanging out with me.
Okay.
We will have Bob
Don't sound so
Kessling.
disappointed. That was rude to Jackson. I can hear it in your voice.
Bob Kessling on the show. Jackson does a great job. Coach Mack, as he does each and every Friday, will look more into what Titans coordinators had to say yesterday at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park when reporters aren't screaming over them.
All right. So, like, the thing in the press conference where you were watching the live stream in real time, it's probably not even worth giving airtime to, because it's just us not being able to act like adults in a room. And the new SI guy who's getting into a shouting match in the middle of screaming over everybody, Paul, Kayla, just barking back there in the background as if that's going to accomplish anything, really, really annoyed me. But that's not the point. That's not what we're going to start with. We're not going to get too self-involved off the top. In fact, we're not going to do normal show off the top, because obviously you heard in Lucas's update the tragedy yesterday, and I'm trying to figure out, all right, do I want to do it off the top? Do I want to wait till the end of the show and just let everybody get on with their day? But I can't get into the stupid, silly thing that we do around here without talking about this. So yesterday, Kansas City Chiefs victory parade going on in downtown Kansas City. All of a sudden, there's an active shooter situation. You have Kansas City Police Department trying to track down a variety of different suspects. You had some very, very brave people out there tackling an active shooter to try and get him down, or he or she. I wasn't able to determine, details based on the cell phone footage that was flying around out there. But as Lucas said in his update, a Kansas mother killed, and 21 people who just wanted to go hang out, have a good time on a Wednesday morning into afternoon, watch their favorite team win their third Super Bowl in the last 4 years, and it turns into just another one of these things that is so heartbreaking and so disgusting and so routine. Do you remember the Covenant shooting? You and me being on the air that day?
Yes, I will unfortunately always remember that.
So, what is your recollection of that? Because that is the first thing that popped into my mind. I'm watching the television broadcast. I'm watching NFL Network. I've just got it on in the background in the office. People are there on the scene. There's cameras everywhere. There's reporters everywhere. There's police, thank God, everywhere. Fire, Kansas City Fire, police, all the different people that were brought in to, just get the thing organized and make sure that it stays on track, so that at least there was a good response time. But, I mean, just how much damage was done in a span of so few minutes. And it made me think about what happened at Covenant and how quickly that all turned into a political discussion that I don't care about anymore. I've given up. Is that a bad thing for me to say? Like, I've given up that these things are not just going to regularly happen on a regular basis. And I'm tired of shouting at people that don't want to listen. And I'm tired of other people shouting at other people that don't want to listen on either side of the thing. I'm sick of it, and nothing changes. I know it's a stick to sports type of thing and whatever, but like that hits me more viscerally now. And all we were doing was sitting in a radio studio about a mile and a half away from Green Hills, where a school shooting happens. And all of a sudden, you and I have to figure out how to cover a school shooting when we have zero experience doing anything like that, and where people are frantic for information, trying to understand where can they go to make sure that their children are safe. My memory of it happening doesn't really and I don't have the best memory, to be honest with you, but I don't really remember much about how it is that you and me went about that, beyond once we were able to turn on the Fox 17 broadcast and WTN was able to give us a hand with some of their reporting on this, to come in here and kind of help guide us through that situation. I can't imagine the chaos on the ground, the chaos in terms of communication. where there is such a massive turnout, and in a snap of a finger, somebody can hurt 22 people and kill one.
Well, when I think about what could be one of the most celebratory moments of a sports fan's life, I think about something like a Super Bowl parade. Like, I picture that here. How many people in Nashville?
Oh, my God.
Would that be just one of the best days of their fanhood, one of the best days of their lives? How many fathers are sharing that with sons, experiencing a championship, celebrating it with the team in the city, downtown? Just the most celebratory thing that you can have as a sports fan to turn into that is so horribly tragic. And there's no more stick to sports because now it bleeds across everything. So the stick to sports thing goes out the window in cases like this because it's officially in every walk of life. In schools and movie theaters, parades, you name it, sporting events. There's no more stick to sports when it comes to this. And that is the most infuriating thing, is that it just immediately devolves into shouting matches and arguments that solve nothing, and it's rinse, repeat.
So, like, what do we do? You know, I'm genuinely asking, what can be done? What is actually going to be done? Because I'm sitting there watching this. Again, they just had a mall shooting in Kansas City not that long ago where their mayor is talking about the situation and how it went down. There were some news clips. I mean, this happens so routinely, and it is such a uniquely American problem. I know there's no simple fix, and I'm not sitting here trying to get into activism or taking sides or whatever like that, but just enough. I'm so tired of being heartbroken every time I turn on the TV and see one of these things, and having it happen a mile and a half from where we are, where you all live, here in Middle Tennessee, here in Nashville, Tennessee, in Green Hills. I mean, not that you would pick a place for these kind of things to be likely, but just a small little school, a grade school in Green Hills, Nashville, Tennessee. So we'll move on. We'll do the show. There was no way for us to do it without talking about this and reliving stuff like that, whether it's Sandy Hook, Covenant, all these different things that have happened over the course of a decade, 15 years, where it seems like the intensity and the frequency has really, really ramped up. I wish that I had a solution. I wish that I could do something with the anger that I feel for this, as so many of you do who have been impacted by this. It is almost impossible now, Lucas, to find somebody who has not been in some form or fashion either personally affected by a shooting situation or knows somebody who was affected by a shooting situation. It's crazy to me. Crazy.
Well, to see Kansas City citizens help apprehend the suspect, to see Kansas City players reportedly comforting kids, Trey Smith, Blaine Gabbert were named, among others, by Albert Breer, who reported on this, talking about players being unbelievable as they left the parade in shock, panicking or calming panicked kids down. He talks about Trey Smith going to one upset kid, giving him the WWE title belt, sitting with him until he calmed down. So you try to find moments of light in these moments of darkness that seem to pop up so routinely, and only here, right? Nowhere else. But, yeah, you just don't know what to say anymore.
Well, that's not great for the radio business, but, I mean, that is the situation that we find ourselves. Did you watch Marcus Spears on NFL Live? Did you see that clip going around yesterday?
Yeah, Marcus was good.
Big gun rights advocate, hunter, fisher, outdoorsman who values the protection of, or the ability to have access to firearms and things like that. And just the way that he spoke with such clarity on it, and how many different people that this is going to think. You know what? Yeah, you know what I can do with my anger, though? I can get pissed at things like the NFL, because I am so tired of these meaningless statements. I'm so sick of it. I saw a couple of different teams. Titans didn't put anything out, did they?
Not that I've seen.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
I need to double check that, because this just came into my mind. If you are not going to do something about the problem, if you are not going to act in a meaningful way, shut up about it. I don't care about your thoughts and prayers anymore. I really don't.
Yeah, from the Titans, it was a retweet of the NFL statement and quote tweeting the Chiefs statement. saying thoughts are with the victims, their families, the community.
You don't need to say something if it's just going to be like, all right, but coming up next, here's our free agency special. Bleep off. I don't want your thoughts and your prayers. I want you to use your giant platform to impact the thing because this thing just impacted you. It just impacted what is arguably the biggest celebration of your year outside of the Super Bowl. The team that wins the Super Bowl, a huge event for an entire fan base, a historically great fan base and a historically great franchise to come together to celebrate the accomplishments of what they have just spent months and months and years in some cases trying to achieve. They get there, everybody's there. Lucas, you mentioned people bringing, parents bringing kids. There's a whole slew of television advertising on the Super Bowl about how bonding an experience Taylor Swift being a part of the Chiefs thing this year was for fathers and daughters. How many fathers and daughters were at a Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl victory parade yesterday, even just to catch a glimpse of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, all of a sudden to be caught in an active shooter situation? Do something about it instead of giving me your meaningless words.
Yeah, it's what should be one of the best memories of a lifetime, of a childhood.
God.
Immediately, with the snap of a finger, turning into one of the worst.
All right, enough.
And Paul Contreras, by the way, the name of one of the Kansas City heroes that tackled one of the suspects. Saw him doing several interviews yesterday.
Everybody likes to think that they could be that person, but that takes such incredible bravery to not even think about it, to just immediately have that reaction. So thank God for the people that were there on the ground. Thank every higher power out there that was a situation that required an oversized police presence already. But I'm sick of it. So we'll move on. We'll do normal show. We'll do all the stupid, silly stuff that we normally do. But I couldn't do the rest of it without talking about it. And I know Lucas feels the same way. So we appreciate you guys bearing with us. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. There was a press conference yesterday. We met your new offensive coordinator and your new defensive coordinator. I was down there. We'll tell you what we liked from the press conferences coming up next. Welcome back. Hope you're having a good Thursday morning. Thanks for hanging out with Lucas and myself. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Speaking of the phone number, Lucas, I am out tomorrow and Monday, but in my absence, you are doing more Bonnaroo ticket giveaways, yeah?
Got a pair to give away for Friday Fire tomorrow. Do that every Friday at 11:45.
Make sure you're listening. Single-day passes to Bonnaroo, parking pass included with that. Gave away a couple this week. Got some more to do tomorrow, so make sure you're listening all day, but in the 11 o'clock hour if you want a chance to go to Bonnaroo. I was at the press conference yesterday. I appreciate Lucas and Joseph giving me a little flexibility so I could shoot over to St. Thomas Sports Park at about 12:15. It was a long press conference. There was a lot of information to go through. Did you like the way that they set it up with Callahan first, introductory statements, Callahan, Wilson up there together answering questions, then Callahan and Holz up there answering questions together? I thought initially thought all three might be up there, which kind of makes it a little bit clunky. I thought that we got the best out of that situation other than having done them individually and spent, an hour and a half doing press conferences.
Yeah, it didn't feel like you left not having learned anything, right? I thought we got a good grasp of Dennard Wilson and Nick Holz and who they are sort of as communicators.
Well, it's different in the sense of press conferences with Vrabel and Kelly, less with Bowen, and Vrabel, not too bad, but they were more hostile, shall we say? The Kelly press conferences weren't hostile. He just wasn't going to say anything to you, basically. Like, he's going to say as few words as possible to get through the press conference, and that's in season and stuff like that. But I feel like I talked more to Nick Holz yesterday, or I heard Nick Holz say more words yesterday than I did Tim Kelly or Todd Downing in either of their tenures as offensive coordinator here. Now, winning the press conference doesn't matter. What you do matters, and we will have no proof of concept of that until we start to see them take the field not too long from now with rookie tryouts or undrafted tryouts and rookie mini camps and OTAs, all that stuff, really not too far in the distant future. But I do feel like they were willing to let us inside a lot more of their thinking right out of the gate. Now, will that remain the case for the entirety of their tenures here? I have no idea. But if you remember Kevin Clark from ESPN coming on the radio show and glowing about Brian Callahan and how open he is to sharing things about how it is that he goes about his job, what his thought process is in certain situations, I'm looking forward to post-game press conferences with him to see how far we can actually flesh that out if he's willing to. They're not going to give away their whole game plan on a regular basis or anything like that. But can we retroactively, after you've executed a game plan or not executed a game plan, kind of get a more defined version of where things went right or wrong for you? Just trying to learn. There are plenty of coaches who have the opinion that it is not their job to teach the media football, that it is not their job necessarily to teach the fan base football. Their job is to focus on their football team, their execution, get through the media stuff, and move on with their day. And that's fine. You can do that if you want to. I don't necessarily see the harm, and I'm a media guy. I like more access. I like more quotes, better than less. So I'm speaking from a perspective of bias. But I do think that you guys want to learn. You guys consume football-related anything at an unholy rate. And what I enjoyed about yesterday's press conference is it felt like a very open dialogue about how it was that these things are going to go about until, media people get into a pissing match in the middle of it, and you're not going to shout louder than me. Shut up, both of you. Anyway.
The best part about that was how amused Callahan seemed to be by it.
Oh, my God.
Kind of both his hands went up.
Was he amused or was he just smiling because he's uncomfortable?
Sure, maybe that. But
does Nick Holz look like
Holz
he
was a
looks
little
scared
wide-eyed.
a little bit.
He was a little wide-eyed, like, what's happening? And Brian just had this little grin on his face with both hands up, like, all right, kids, let's calm down.
That's what it was. It's kids. you children. Stop it. Nobody wants to go to a raise your hand type of situation and we'll call on you from the class. Nobody wants to do that. Behave yourselves so we can get through this. I don't care what they do in bigger media markets. I don't care how combative it is. shut up and let us all get through the press conference. The football people are actually saying interesting football things for once. Shut up. Anyway. What was your favorite thing to come out of it? Because for me, I'm looking forward to speaking more to Dennard Wilson for sure. That is a person who I think is going to be a very interesting figure in all of this. And Callahan and Callahan's answer about Wilson is the idea of in football having a head coach of the defense. I thought he kind of walked us through what the logic is. And basically, listen, we're just trying to hire the best person for the job. My ultimate responsibility is to oversee everything, but the defense is Dennard's thing. And we're going to help him make the best hires possible, and I'll be there to assist him in any way possible. But just kind of understanding more about the division of labor and the new play calling situation that's going to involve both Nick Holz and Brian Callahan being a play calling head coach for the first time.
That was the most interesting to me. How much detail they were willing to go into the process week to week, and how different the two are, Wilson and Holtz. Just personality-wise, seemingly how they communicate, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum in a way. Not that one is right or wrong and one's not, but Dennard Wilson, did you feel like you got, and for what it's worth, it's a press conference, but did you feel like you got head coaching vibes from Dennard Wilson?
Sure.
Just in the way he sort of commanded a room, where Holtz a little more reserved, kind of, hey, we're going to sit down and talk about this, which Matt LaFleur steps up to a podium. You don't think, oh, that guy's a head coach, right? That guy's going to make me run through a brick wall.
He's definitely come into that role more for sure. But the Matt LaFleur that I knew and worked with here is definitely not the Matt LaFleur who he is now.
And he's always been a more soft-spoken guy with the media, more than not. So that doesn't define anything. Matt LaFleur's done a fine job in Green Bay. But those are the vibes you get from Dennard Wilson for sure.
Well, that's the thing. You want to hire people in those roles that want to be head coaches. And I love the idea that they have a ton of career assistant coaches all over the place because you're trying to maintain some level of continuity and consistency. And that's the best way to do it. Now, how you keep all those parts and places in peace over the course of not just one season, but into the next and stuff like that, it's really, really hard to do. But Dennard Wilson, I don't know that would you want to hire a coordinator that didn't want to be a head coach? That would almost raise like a red flag to me. If you don't have that kind of aspiration, that kind of drive to be the highest or the best version of what it is that your profession is, right? To be a head coach at some level, whether that's a college head coach or an NFL head coach, whatever. Deion had to go to Jackson State and is now in a situation where at Colorado, it's going to be a fascinating experiment. But I want people that want that drive if I'm Brian Callahan, even as I understand that you don't want to lose good people. You want people that other teams want to hire to be head coaches. So we'll not get too far ahead of ourselves. The most interesting thing was the back and forth between Holtz and Callahan and the play calling thing. We will get to that a little later on. But first, I want you to hear from Wilson because obviously one of the first questions that was asked is base defense. You're playing less and less frequently, or more often, you're playing with three corners in your 5 defensive backs basically in your base defense. What is it exactly that your base defense is going to look like? And this is what Dennard Wilson had to say.
Well, right now we're just going through the process. We just got here 2 days ago, really. The staff's coming together. So we're evaluating the players, evaluating the talent that's here. About football, it's not about scheme. It's about the players, right? So we have to figure out what they do well, and then we'll put the scheme around them, all right, to allow their talents to flourish. I can tell you this about the scheme, all right? And I learned this a long time ago. General George Patton said this: nobody ever defended anything successful. You're going to attack and attack some more. We're going to be attacking defense. We're going to be violent in our approach. All right, we're going to be smart. We're going to be intelligent. We're never going to compromise for competing. And that's the style of brand of football that we're going to play around here.
You think you were going to get it? Did you have General George Patton on your bingo card yesterday at the Titans press conferences?
First answer from the first question.
He'd been thinking about that for a while. I think he went in there wanting to use a General George Patton quote. I appreciate him for it. Made me laugh. But yeah, that's your new defensive coordinator. Russell says, Buck, do you want to be the CEO of Cumulus Radio? No, but I want to be the highest evolution of whatever it is that these sports talk gas bag people are doing, whether that's, I don't know. Who do you want to be? Whose career do you aspire to have, Lucas?
What are we doing?
Nance, is that the person that you were attacking? Are you trying to actively denigrate him on our airwaves, using your platform to attack people?
What just
bringing
happened?
Jim Nance down, trying to get a hold of these jobs?
Talking about base defense and what happened there?
Oh, because he's asking about coaches who want to be the highest, the best evolution of what it is that their profession is. Coordinators that want to be head coaches.
We talked about this. I want to host Jeopardy.
Oh, we did. You won Jeopardy. Who's doing Jeopardy right now?
I haven't a clue.
That's sad. That makes me sad. What's going to happen in Wheel of Fortune when Pat Sajak and Vanna White go away? These are the things that keep me up at night. Anyway. So your coordinators, they presented well at the press conference. Your head coach, I think that is going to be a productive way for you guys to learn more about how it is that your football team operates. And in looking at a couple of different things, Ken Jennings is the host now, Lucas. Do you also want to attack Ken Jennings in the same way that you've gone after Jim Nance?
Who in the world is Ken Jennings?
He's one of the most famous Jeopardy winners. He's like a robot.
Oh, right. He won it a bunch of times. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, because they had Aaron Rodgers trying out for it before he went kind of sideways on him. And then I don't know who they went to after Ken Jennings. Wasn't it somebody from the cast of Big Bang Theory? I don't remember.
I think she was doing Celebrity Jeopardy. I might be wrong.
Either way. So your base defense, TBD, which is the correct answer. We talked about this yesterday. What their defense is defined by Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry, and Amani Hooker? Are those the three primary actors on the Titans defense? The three, longer or longest tenured players.
Well, why do they have to be long tenured to be a primary actor in the defense?
They don't necessarily, but I'm just saying.
Because I'd include Roger McCreary in that as well.
He is a good corner. He's a solid starting corner.
And the guy who set the single season record for tackles for the Titans last season.
He's on a 1-year deal.
That's right. Aziz is a free agent.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, Arden Key is on a 3-year contract. Aziz is a free agent. So I'm talking about, what do you know you have that you can lean on, down in, down out, provided that you don't have injury? Amani Hooker, Harold Landry, Jeff Simmons. Roger is a solid corner that I think could be better, but he's the best corner that they have, so okay, count it. How are you supposed to come up with what your defense looks like if those are the only parts and obviously there's guys under contract that are also on the defense. I mean, if you want to, are they going to do something with Jack Gibbons this year? I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at with it. The Titans defense is as holy as any of the 3 units that they have right now.
But that's the thing. A lot of the messaging has been about doing what players are comfortable with, right? Brian Callahan said near the end of the presser, good players fit on any roster. Talking about making it work with what you have, but so much of what the roster is going to look like in 2024 has yet to be shaped and molded.
Sure.
So that's what we're looking to find out in the next few weeks. Like, okay, we understand you want to make the most of what you have here with those foundational guys that we've listed, but who are you going to be looking for?
Yeah. And the way that this works, it's not like, okay, once we get through the draft, now we can come up with a defense. No, they have a playbook, right? They have conceptually a variety of different things that they're going to be able to run, that they'll want to run, and that they'll determine how much of it they can actually utilize once the roster takes more shape. So I wouldn't get too caught up in a lack of definition about the defense just yet, because the correct answer is, well, we'll see who we have here, and then we'll move forward. What did you make about his answer, Callahan's answer about the 3 people they kept from the strength and conditioning staff? Did you happen to catch that, or was that Blaine and Mickey?
I did, and I can pull it up here. We could play it because we talked about that, and I thought surely the new strength coach will have kind of autonomy to make changes, and you dismissed it.
I did, which is why I asked it. Because I think it's a good question by you. Because I just assume, well, if you're telling these people that they're going to be retained, okay, then they're retained. But that was not the answer that Brian Callahan gave yesterday.
Yeah, that's always going to be part of the conversation. But the people that we've retained, just similar to the coaches we've retained in the process, are with us to start. And when you get new people in, you have conversations, and they have opportunities to interview themselves, and that's sort of how that works. Just in general, coaches and strength staff be very similar. Anytime you're hiring a new person, there's always an influx of potential new people. So that's the nature of our business, and I think we're all on the same page with it.
So the way that I took that is, we didn't fire Frank Perano, but we let him pursue other opportunities, and Frank got a job. So here is the strength and conditioning staff that is here. We are still, awaiting a special teams coordinator hire, awaiting a head of strength and conditioning hire. So I'm glad that you brought it up, Lucas, because I honestly, I would have assumed that, okay, if they're announced in this press conference, then they're probably going to be here next year. But yours was a fair point.
And that's what makes sense, right? Any walk of life, any business, what sense would it make to be sitting down with strength and conditioning coach candidates saying, well, these are your staffers. These are the people that you can't do anything about.
That would make less sense for sure.
Yeah,
but
that wouldn't be logical.
I found it curious to include specific names of people being retained on the staff without without them being given some confidence that, hey, we're going to keep you on this staff. It's more of, hey, we're going to keep you on this staff to give you the opportunity to interview with the guy when we get him, or the gal, I guess. Suppose you could have a female strength and conditioning coach. And we'll go from there. So more of a conditional retention than a hard-line retention, which is probably the way that I should have looked at it.
They just weren't fired, and the new coach will have an opportunity to keep or not keep whoever he chooses, I would imagine.
Is that one of those things? Well, we're parting ways. You're not fired, but it's a mutual parting of ways. All right, who mutually decided that we're going to part ways here? Those always make me laugh. Everybody's always given the option to resign, Lucas. No matter how much scandal and shame that you have in your life, in any walk of life, we will always be given the option to resign in disgrace, which I appreciate because we'll probably need it one day. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. What did you like? What did you not like about what you heard, if anything, from your new coordinators yesterday? And Brian Callahan, the head coach, speaking with them. We'll let you hear more from Brian Callahan later in the show about hiring Bill as the offensive line coach and the new OC's thoughts on Will Levis as the quarterback. Next, though, we got to talk about Tennessee doing what to Arkansas, Lucas?
Hog walking.
That's next.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
You ever taken a hog for a walk? Oh, phrasing. That came out differently than I intended it to. That's what the Tennessee Volunteers did last night. Especially different kind of phrasing coming off Valentine's Day for some of you lonely folks out there, but that's all right. Vols get it done over the Razorbacks on the road, 75-57. It was a pretty complete performance from start to finish. Tennessee trailed early on within the first 5 minutes. It got out of the gates pretty fast for both teams. And ultimately, the number 12 Vols, they roll by. The thing, though, probably the headline is that Zakai Ziegler got hurt in this game.
Number 8 Vols. Sorry, continue.
Why does it say number 12 next to them?
What are you looking at?
I hope the right box score.
Tell me what you see right now.
Oh, no.
Because my guess is you were looking at the box score of March 2023 when the number 12 Vols beat Arkansas at home and Zakai Ziegler tore his ACL.
Oh, my God.
And that you recklessly took that to the air right now, scaring Vols fans out of their seats this morning, saying that Zakai Ziegler got hurt when he, in fact, did not get hurt.
I didn't see it.
He did not get hurt. That is literally 1 year old, what you were looking at.
How does that happen?
I don't know.
Either way, they beat the hell out of Arkansas last night. Zakai Ziegler's okay. I'm sorry.
The number 8 Vols beat Arkansas 92-63, and Arkansas in the second half was pitiful. Pitiful. They were in the game. It's a 6-point game at the half. They were hot from three, kept them in it. Tennessee was dominating in the paint, but having a hard time. They only hit 5 3-pointers on the night, shoot sub 30% from there. They're in the game, and coming out of the gates, they just laid down. It was honestly kind of sad to watch. That looked like a team that just didn't want to be there. And Tennessee outscores Arkansas 46-23. Jonas Adu double-double, 23 points, 12 rebounds. Dalton Connect, 22 points at this point is a quiet night for him.
It's still above his season average. Here's the thing, though. What do I do with Jonas Adu? Because we talked about the level of inconsistency around the supporting cast that we expected better from, right? And him being a part of that discussion. We've talked about Josiah Jordan-James. We've talked about a variety of different players within this, and yeah, I mean, for Arkansas at 3-8, I don't think they don't want to be there. I think you can discern that just by watching them on television. But what do I do with that kind of night? It's a bad team. They do it on the road, though. It's hard to win on the road, and we've talked about this. That slip up against A&M, it's not inconsequential. A&M's definitely a solid and competitive basketball team. I think we fully expect them to be one of these tournament teams the closer that we get to this thing. But if I can get I don't need Adu to outscore Dalton Connect or anything like that. I'd take a double-double, or at least something close to a double-double on a regular basis. I don't know how often he's capable of doing that. I just haven't seen him do it with consistency.
Adu has been consistent this season. He hasn't taken over games necessarily, but he's been consistent. He doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't make a ton of mistakes. The opportunity will be there, though, for him to be dominant because teams can't really afford to devote all their attention to stopping Jonas Adu. I mean, Tennessee's got two things this year that it has not had since the Grant and Admiral teams from a few years ago. That is just an alpha scorer in Dalton Connect and a dominant post presence, or a guy who can be a dominant post presence and has shown he can be that in Jonas Adu. Haven't had that since Grant Williams. They've tried it with John Fulkerson, who was a fun player and would have these crazy 27-point games. Brandon Huntley Hatfield, they tried to make that. He's now playing for Louisville, who is terrible. So Jonas Adu is that for Tennessee. Dalton Connect is that in terms of being that alpha scorer for Tennessee. How far can it take him? I mean, that's the question. With Zakai Ziegler running the pace and Santiago Vescovi being a role player now, and Jordan Gainey off the bench. 17 points last night. If he can have that sort of output as Tennessee's sixth man, that could really be something that takes this team over the top.
So there's a statement in the chat that I'd be curious to get the audience and your reaction to, and everybody in the chat as well, or listening on the radio. The Vols will go as far in the tournament as Santiago Vescovi, Triple J, and Rick Barnes take them. I think you're putting a lot of emphasis on you want them to be contributors. Now, obviously, Rick Barnes plays a huge role in that, but I'm leaning more on Dalton Connect taking the Vols as far as he can take them. And if you can get productivity and efficiency from the surrounding pieces and parts that help facilitate that, those are facilitators. Those are not drivers. Yeah, Barnes is a different situation, but even him, once they're out there on the floor, it's largely out of his control, unless he somehow botches a game management situation.
Yeah, I'd flip those two from Santi and Josiah Jordan-James to Connect and Adu.
Right,
those are the drivers for Tennessee this season. It's interesting the role that Vescovi has just the evolution of Santiago Vescovi at Tennessee from coming in mid-season and bursting onto the scene, just fresh on campus for a couple weeks, and he scores a bunch of points against LSU. Big three-point threat, one of the best three-point shooters in the SEC a year later. And then he's Tennessee's lead scorer for a time. And then now he's kind of been relegated in terms of scoring into this, get him 4 or 5 three-point attempts per game. His percentages are not very good. He's 0 for 3 from beyond the arc last night. But he certainly plays a role for this team just in terms of defending, leadership, a lot of those intangibles. There's a reason that Vescovi hasn't been benched yet, despite having probably his worst number percentage-wise of his career from 3, and that is what he has been best at in his career. But he doesn't have to be
Barnes,
that.
by the way, you want to stick with him, right? You want to that is a player who has been incredibly important for you for several years at this point. He does deserve the benefit of the doubt, which I think also lends itself to what you're talking about, Lucas, that level of leadership and intangible quality that if you're a player, you want to know that your coach has your back. And it feels like Rick Barnes is understanding of whatever it is that's causing Vescovi's performance and percentages, especially from 3, to drop the way that they have year over year. And I think that's what makes Rick Barnes the right person to kind of guide a team through the trials and tribulations of a regular season, and he does so successfully well. Vols are 8-3 in the conference. It's not the end. It's certainly not a lock. Far from it that they're going to be able to secure a 1 seed now that they've done themselves a bit of damage in a softer part of their schedule. Not the softest part of their schedule, but certainly they had the opportunity to beat A&M and just really didn't look like they showed up.
No, they didn't, especially defensively. Yeah. 3 of their next 4 at home. Vanderbilt on Saturday. Vanderbilt will be going into that game confident after their second SEC win. But you host Vanderbilt. You travel to Mizzou, who's had a rough year. You host A&M for a chance at a revenge win, and then you host a red-hot Auburn team that hung 100 on South Carolina at home last night. So this next 4-game stretch critical for Tennessee and their hopes for a 1 seed and the SEC regular season title, which is a fun race right now. I mean, it's going to go right down to the wire. Could go right down to that last day of the regular season on March 9th.
I hate that Arkansas is bad. That's a good, traditionally basketball program.
Tennessee had not won in Bud Walton Arena since 2009. It was 7 straight losses at Arkansas until last night.
They won by 29. It's the largest margin of victory, courtesy of ESPN Stats and Info, over Arkansas by Tennessee. It nearly broke the building record, but apparently that record was previously broken from the worst Arkansas loss at Bud Walton Arena, which is a 32-point defeat
to Auburn, I believe. Yeah, they looked lifeless in the second half. That was not encouraging. Eric Musselman's a great coach. He's an energetic coach. So I don't expect Arkansas to be down for long. But a take care of business type of night. That's what Tennessee did.
That's all you can ask for. How do we feel about Vanderbilt? This game, are you going?
No, I will not be in Knoxville. I will be in Toledo this weekend.
It says Tennessee plays at Vanderbilt on Saturday.
Tennessee hosts Vanderbilt on Saturday. What are you looking at?
Well, that's just a misprint by ESPN then. Yeah.
Have you earned the benefit of the doubt?
No, but it's, I don't. We're not on camera today. I can't show the camera. I swear to God, it says plays at Vanderbilt on Saturday. All right. Bad job by ESPN. Bad job by me to start the segment. That's all right. We'll finish strong. All right. Second hour. Titans are trying to bring over the Ravens mentality. I know that's going to not sit great with a lot of Titans fans that hate the Ravens, but you like their defense, and you're getting a little bit of it with Dennard Wilson. We'll get into that coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Tennessee grabbed a bounce-back win over Arkansas on the road Wednesday night in blowout fashion, 92-63, outscoring the Razorbacks 46-23 in the second half. Jonas Adu with a double-double, 23 points and 12 boards. Dalton Connect with 22 points. The Vols improved to 18-6, 8-3 in conference play, still behind 9-3 South Carolina and Auburn in the SEC standings. Alabama leads the regular season title race at 9-2. In NFL news, the San Francisco 49ers have fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks after only one season. Kyle Shanahan stating it was not the right fit. Also, an assistant coaching change in Knoxville as linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie is headed back to his previous stop where he came from to work for Sharon Moore and Michigan. That's two assistants that Josh Heupel will be tasked with replacing after running backs coach Jerry Mack went to take the same position with the Jacksonville Jaguars. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour. Thanks for hanging. We appreciate you guys spending your time with us. We are going to get into the Titans' new play calling process on offense a little later on in the show. You're going to hear from your new offensive coordinator, Nick Holz, about your quarterback, Will Levis. But before we do that, I think we should take a look at the defense and Dennard Wilson, what he stands to bring to this team. The former Ravens secondary coach, now turned Tennessee Titans DC. The first time that he will get the opportunity to be a defensive coordinator in his career. He gave a press conference yesterday that I think a lot of you seem to enjoy and talked about a level of mentality, or was asked, I guess, did not provide this without a response or without a question, rather, but was asked about the level of mentality that he planned to bring over from the Ravens defense, which was, of course, the best regular season defense in the sport this year, and how that's applicable to what he's going to do here with the Titans. He was also asked a great many questions about base defense and things like that. What's that going to look like? Hey, we'll tell you more once we get more players in here, and obviously they have the bones of something, and I would say maybe 7 or 8 guys you feel really, really good about being on this roster next year. But for the most part, it's a clean slate defensively, which I think I kind of like. I like the idea of somebody with the contract situations being where they are, with Kevin Byard having moved on, with Jeff and Harold under contract for the foreseeable future, and the rest of it just a bit patchwork together. I like the idea of somebody getting a fresh slate, a clean slate as a coordinator, not just from a coaching standpoint, but from a personnel perspective as well. Now, we'll see what they do in free agency. Are we all in agreement that we would like to see Azeez Al-Shaair come back? I think he's not David Long. He's not David Long. He's not as good as David Long, but he did just break a regular season record for the most tackles in a single season that was previously held by Stephen Tulloch.
Yeah, you could do worse than Azeez Al-Shaair for an off-ball linebacker.
Still have plenty of needs to address there. Defensive line has all manner of holes in it. We'll see what Autry's market ends up looking like and how interested they are in bringing back the 33-year-old pass rusher. But for the most part, you're going to get a bunch of new people on this defense. He was asked, Wilson was yesterday, about how he's going to try and feel out the process of play calling and not having done it before, but being around so many different people, so many different influences that have helped prepare him for the opportunity that he has in front of him. And I think, do you feel like there's a misconception with play calling about how it is that teams actually put together these game plans? Because we talk about, they spend so much time preparing this, that, and the other. When you get to Sunday, sure, it's the actual act of seeing the plays play out in a real live game situation, but the process of play calling, narrowing down the menu of plays that you're going to use in that particular matchup so that you're not drawing from your full playbook every time, making sure that your personnel understands, all right, when we get into certain situations, down and distance situations, red zone situations, opening possessions, whatever the case may be, offensively or defensively, this is the menu that we're going to pull from so you know what we're going to be doing going in. So you're not out there just waiting and waiting and waiting as the play clock ticks down for something that we may have gone over in training camp or something like that. So the bulk of that is going to be done during the week, and he's going to have all kinds of support to help him get it done. But he was asked a question about kind of feeling out the right opportunity to blitz, and this being a defense that hasn't been very blitz heavy. The Ravens were not either last year. They preferred to rush to win with numbers and coverage, and they had the horses up front to do it. This is Wilson kind of describing those kind of situations and how he might approach them, given that I think a very particular 3rd and 6 zero blitz just got a San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator fired.
Well, just like anything, you learn from the people that you've been around. And obviously, I've been around a lot of great coordinators. So a lot of things that they do is entrenched in my being. A lot of the philosophies they've had, I believe in. So we're going to blitz, but we're going to blitz, and when we blitz, it's going to be smart. It's going to be educated. It's going to be there at the right time. It's just not going to be reckless. We're going to play coverage. We're going to play man-to-man. We're going to be multiple in everything we do, all right, in terms of our fronts, any of those things. So we'll be versatile, all right. We'll present problems to offenses, all right, on how we approach it, and, we'll go from there.
So he's got a bunch of different influences that include, by the way, Greg Williams and Jeff Fisher during his time with the Rams. He said he keeps in contact with both of those people. There's a fair amount of franchise institutional knowledge that they have brought back. Have you noticed? Whether it's Steve Jackson or Frank Bush, Tracy Rocker, people that have been here that know this franchise and can kind of help, I don't know how important institutional knowledge is in the grand scheme of things, but I do think it helps new coaches from new situations being dropped in here because they can at least give them kind of, show them where their offices are and things like that. Wilson got into a variety of different things, including, what his thoughts on Jeff Simmons were. I know everybody wants to hear from the new defensive coordinator about the importance of Jeff, just to make sure that that's a box that you check. He said he had talked to Jeff the other day. Great personality, outstanding young man. When you watch him play, he's a big guy. He's versatile. He can play the 3. He can play outside. He's explosive. He has great hands. He can affect the game by himself, and to have players like that and put them in positions to have success, it's a wonderful thing coming in here when you have a guy that plays at that level. Who's the best Ravens front 7 player? Justin Madubuike is probably going to get paid like one.
Yeah. But it's a good question. We talked about this when we were vetting Mike McDonald, when the Titans interviewed him and going over the accolades of the Ravens defense that Dennard Wilson was a part of. The last 2 defenses Dennard Wilson's been a part of have led the league in sacks.
Mm-hmm. Philadelphia, just for the audience.
For Philadelphia 2 years ago. Tracy Rocker, the defensive line coach on that staff. But just last season, Ravens, 60 sacks, led the league. Where did they finish in blitz percentage? Where would you project?
Low.
25th.
Yeah.
So bottom 10. Philadelphia led the league 70 sacks 2 seasons ago, finished 19th.
Yeah.
Bottom half of the league.
So more, but still, they're preferring to make sure that they have the advantage in coverage. And by the way, that is something, pass defense is something that they put a particular emphasis on in in Wilson's portion of the press conference yesterday. They basically that they understand it's far more efficient to move the ball through the air than it is on the ground. Run defense is still important. We're there to stop the pass. And I'm sure that's music to Titans fans' ears, having dealt with explosive plays all over the place last year and the level of technique or lack of technique that you saw your secondary playing with and how those explosive plays seem to come at the worst possible time, given the game situation. And you finally get signs of life from the offense. The defense plays well for 3.5 quarters. All of a sudden, there's a 51-yard bomb over the top of SMB's head. With him, who's your favorite assistant hire under Wilson? I'm sure Vols fans and Titans fans would probably say Tracy Rocker. It's a huge hire for them.
Rocker has a very, very extensive resume. I mean, at every stop, you could. Auburn in 2010, Nick Fairley, dominant season for Auburn.
Nick Fairley, man.
Second biggest reason Auburn made that run, right behind Cam Newton.
He was not much of a pro.
No. He highly drafted, did not really pan out in New Orleans, I think.
Was he the same draft as Marcel Darius?
Darius, I remember Darius was starred in the 2009 national title game. So if I had to guess off the top of my head, I'd say Darius was a year prior to that. I don't know if Darius had another year. I'll never forget his fumble recovery for a touchdown against Texas in the Rose Bowl in 2009 with that giant club on his arm. But yeah, Darius was drafted in 2011. Oh, so he did. So he was only a sophomore when he dominated the national championship game against Texas. So, yeah, I guess he and Fairley would have been drafted. That would have been the same. Darius was the number 3 overall pick in 2011.
Fairley went later.
Fairley went later that year. He was the number 13 pick in 2011.
Okay.
And Rocker had his hands on Fairley with the Titans, Jarrell Casey's first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Tracy Rocker. With Tennessee, he really helped develop Matthew Butler into a draft pick and a leader on that team. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt had a nice staff. Jeremy Pruitt was obviously not a good head coach, but Jeremy Pruitt had a really good coaching staff. T. Martin, Derek Ansley, who was a coordinator for the Chargers under Brandon Staley. Tyson Helton's doing a great job at WKU as the head coach, and Tracy Rocker, one of those two. So as far as resume is concerned, I would say Tracy Walker for sure.
He had his options, right? He had options. We've talked about this. He was asked questions about why the Titans made more sense than, for example, the Rams or the Bears, other places that he interviewed, the Packers. And he mentioned for people who were, we talked about yesterday the Gentry Estes column on the Titans really, really trying to sell Rand Carthon and people having an incomplete grade on Rand Carthon or being too quick to determine his level of impact, his successes, his failures. A big theme of the Dennard Wilson press conference for me, Lucas, was how big an impact Rand Carthon had on bringing Dennard Wilson to this team. Wilson brought up the idea of coming up together with the Rams. Carthon and Wilson were there in lower level roles at the same time, like Coach Mack and Jeff Fisher and all them were with the Rams staff. And the idea that the two of them, Wilson and Carthon, used to talk about, hey, when we get to this point, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to treat people. This is how we're going to do things that we've learned here. This is how we're going to do things differently from what we learned in previous stops and stuff like that. So, people complaining about Rand not being at the Senior Bowl or whatever, or people, this general Rand theme that unfortunately seems inescapable because just apparently everybody has to have an opinion on the GM before we actually see what he does. That kind of stuff is why the relationship element of Rand is so important and why I'd rather have him working with Callahan the past couple of weeks than down in Mobile, Alabama, sitting in the stands watching a couple of left tackles, even though the left tackle thing is going to be important. Bad example. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the number. NFL teams undergoing the most change. Where would you rank the Titans in that discussion? We're talking about a pretty significant pivot, at least on one side of the ball. Who else looks like they are in for a pretty big landscape shift? We'll talk about that coming up next. We're going to tell you what Brian Callahan had to say about the most important hire that he's made, his dad, here in just about 20 minutes from now. But in the meantime, let's talk about teams who stand to undergo the most seismic shifts this offseason, whether that's coaching changes, personnel, some teams going through ownership changes, or I guess the Commander Skins football team has already been through an ownership change. But there is always stuff going on with all 32 teams. But the extreme level of change that some of these teams are getting ready to go through, I think impacts Tennessee directly, and also I think Tennessee is one of these teams. If I had to ask you 1 out of 32, if I did ask you 1 out of 32, for the audience, for Lucas, 615-737-1045, and of course the FNM Bank chat where you can live stream Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch today. Which team in your mind is getting ready to undergo the biggest offseason change? Which team is going to look the most drastically different, whether that's who's on the sideline, who's on the field for them, what they're running as opposed to what they used to run? Which team immediately jumps into your head? Tennessee's a good. I would hear an argument.
It's Tennessee.
Really?
It's Tennessee. Now, in terms of personnel, the Washington Commanders are doing a complete overhaul.
Mm-hmm.
But Ron Rivera, veteran, defensive coach, Dan Quinn, veteran, defensive coach, their paths are weirdly similar, right? Like took a team to the Super Bowl, lost in the Super Bowl, now getting that other opportunity.
No, I know. They fired Ron Rivera to hire Ron Rivera.
Yeah. Seahawks, Pete Carroll, going to young Pete Carroll.
That's right.
Bill Belichick gone, young Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo. The biggest competitor with the Titans as far as philosophical shift would probably be in L.A., right?
Oh,
From Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh. Like, that is opposite ends of the spectrum in a similar way that Vrabel to Callahan are at.
Because Bieniemy to Cliff Kingsbury is still a big change. Chiefs,
sure.
Chiefs wanted to run the football. And again, we don't know who will be the quarterback for the Commander Skins football team just yet.
Yeah, and there were sellers at the trade deadline last year. Like, total overhaul. New GM.
Right. Defense is different. Chase Young no longer plays for the Commanders. Who was the guy that got traded to the Bears? Yeah.
New GM. Total overhaul there.
I would say I would put Washington above Tennessee for sure.
Because a lot of the foundational pieces, you're right, remain for the Titans.
Not a lot.
Well, I think you could pick one sort of at every level on both sides of the ball, right? And I don't know that you can't say that about Washington.
Sure, but even then, those guys just got here. Like, I'm just playing devil's advocate to your, to what you're saying. Hopkins just got here. That is a foundational piece, but that's not like some long-standing member of the Tennessee Titans. Levis just got here. Carthon just got here. It's still relatively new.
I think we'll do that a little bit tomorrow when you're gone, is look at, okay, the biggest building block at every group, at every level on both sides of the ball for the Titans, because you can't really play that game right now in Washington.
No.
I mean, I can't tell you who the offense or defense is going to revolve around. Offensively, it's going to be whoever they take with the number 2 pick.
Is it the Alabama running back?
B-Rob, Brian Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah, McLaurin. I mean, they've got some pieces. But philosophically, though, like, we understand personnel-wise, Washington's going to be night and day. But philosophically, who makes the biggest shift? Titans or Chargers?
Probably the Titans. Of teams that changed their head coaches. I mean, I know Brandon Staley is a defense-first guy in theory, but his defenses weren't very good. Basically, the entire time he was in Los Angeles. I know they were up there in sacks last year because didn't Khalil Mack have a 6-sack game last year? Something obscene. Harbaugh, though. So it's basically like Kellen Moore to Harbaugh, if that's the way that we're going to look at this. Because they're bringing over Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator from Michigan. They're bringing back Greg Roman, who, of course, was the Niners offensive coordinator with Alex Smith and Kaepernick.
A former Vandy defensive coordinator, Jesse Minter, under Clark Lee.
What?
Yeah, he was Clark's first DC. Got snapped up by Michigan quickly.
Ooh, you want to talk about a rise.
It's a quick rise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for him. Oh, my God. Going from Vanderbilt sideline to an NFL sideline in, 3 years,
With
2
the
years?
national championship in between.
Not bad. and a defense that is regarded as the college football version of the Ravens, right? Because Mike McDonald was there with at Michigan
the year prior. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, blank slate. For all the reasons that we made the argument about it being the most appealing job if you're a new head coach, I still think that that's kind of the reason why Washington wins that out. Now, whose sea change is going to help them the most? Because the Chargers were not a playoff team last year.
They have a playoff roster.
Yeah. Although they have plenty of questions unto themselves between the wide receivers, between Eckler.
Eckler's a free agent.
It's going to be a different looking Chargers offense for sure, for a variety of different reasons.
But that's a playoff roster. That's a playoff quarterback.
I tend to think so. Well, he's not been there a ton. And the one time he went, Lucas, the Jags pantsed him. So I'm not down on Justin Herbert, okay? But I do think that there is some level of underachievement that needs to be attributed to Justin Herbert unto himself, not just Brandon Staley's holding him back. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have way higher expectations for Justin Herbert than he's ever delivered on, beyond like the Tua comparisons. And even then, Tua has been the more successful quarterback since they've come into the league together. So it's an interesting discussion.
Real quick, one we haven't mentioned. Atlanta.
Oh, see, I would have said Buffalo. Atlanta is going to be different going from Art to Raheem Morris and new quarterback and all those things. But Buffalo's cap situation is going to force them to make a 2023 Chiefs-like pivot, right? Or I guess a 2022 Chiefs-like pivot, where you look at what the Chiefs were able to do without Tyreek Hill. They survived it, right? They survived it. They overcame their skill position deficiencies. They have a quarterback that is capable of doing so, but they did that because their cap situation was not great. Buffalo, keeping a roster that is capable of competing in that division, first and foremost, and in the AFC, is Josh Allen capable of overcoming the same things that Patrick Mahomes overcame last year? Now, Mahomes had a better defense. Mahomes had another side of the ball to help uplift him. I don't know. I wouldn't argue that the Chiefs' defense is equal to Mahomes as far as the level of advantage that it gives you, but it was a really damn good defense this year. Buffalo was ravaged by injury. Ravaged. Von Miller, that contract is just awful. So bad. They gave him so much money and over so many years. They can't push too much money down the road, and the 2024 cap isn't out yet, but it's expected to be ballpark $240 million. The Bills are estimated to be $51.8 million over the cap before the hard cap has officially been set. I think Buffalo is going to look a lot different. I know Josh Allen is there. I know Diggs is there. But between the coaching staff decisions that they're going to have to make after they made some in-season changes and the situation that they're going to have to do, I think McDermott calling the defense worked really well last year. I think they just got completely undone by injury. They were able to patchwork together a decent stretch of football given how depleted they were. But I think Buffalo, because of what that offense is getting ready to undergo and the change that Von Miller's contract is going to necessitate, I could make an argument for them over or equal to the Falcons, even though there's not as much outright changing over there.
Is Pittsburgh kind of a...
No, Pittsburgh's doing the exact same thing they've done for 100 years. Art's going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Tomlin's going to play defense. And they're going to say... All right, we never talked about the rumors. And it wasn't really rumor. Garofolo said they were Mike Garofolo of the NFL Network said the Steelers were expected to pursue Tannehill. Maybe we touched on it a little bit. Hold your Steelers fans close, friends close today, because he's an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. But Tannehill definitely took a dip over the last 2 seasons, and the injuries have played a role in that. Pittsburgh's got a better team for him than he was playing with here, and maybe Art will be able to get a better version of Tannehill than Downing or Kelly was able to accomplish. But Pittsburgh looks to be the exact same football team that I've known it feels like my entire life, just with worse quarterback play. What would your argument for Pittsburgh be?
There's not really much of one. They're just trying to find the right fit offensively. The identity doesn't change under Tomlin. And if Tannehill is there, defense is still going to be great. They're still because Mike Tomlin is Mike Tomlin. They're going to probably finish 10-7, whatever it might be, 9-8.
They're getting to the playoffs. It doesn't matter who else from the AFC North is in the playoffs. The Steelers are going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, but sort of a wild card, I wonder, is Chicago.
Just because we don't know what they're doing at quarterback.
No idea. Nobody can say anything with any degree of confidence about what the Bears are going to do with Justin Fields and with that number 1 pick.
You know who else I'm curious about just because we're looking at this? Do you think Vrabel's going to be a shot to be the defensive coordinator in San Francisco? They fired Steve Wilks yesterday.
I saw his name pop up. Ted Wynn, I believe, of The Athletic. I saw him saying, Mike Vrabel will be a home run hire to replace Wilks.
We've been through one of those.
I'm looking around like, am I missing something here? I get Wilks maybe wasn't the best. Maybe Shanahan said not the right fit. Everybody saw Kyle Shanahan, apoplectic that he had to call a timeout on second down in overtime. Didn't want the cover 0 blitz. Felt like Wilks sent pressure at the wrong time in the late stages of that game. But
3rd and 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where Romo, you hear him say, oh, no, bad idea.
Everybody was saying that at home, right? Yeah. Anybody that's watched Patrick Mahomes, the second you saw that extra pressure said, oh, well, first down. And it's Rashee Rice. But I can see why it's a bad look for Kyle Shanahan to, I'm not going to say scapegoat Steve Wilks, but that's the feeling you get, right? If the Niners had won that game, if Kyle Shanahan had drawn something up to score a touchdown on that first possession, the Niners win. Is Steve Wilks fired today? Is the guy who held Patrick Mahomes to 1 touchdown through 4 quarters
it's just such a
fired
crazy
today?
I saw somebody put out a tweet about what Steve Wilks's career has looked like here and how many different situations he's kind of been sandbagged on. Because this Carolina, they fired the Nebraska coach.
Carolina? Matt Rule?
Matt Rule, Thank you. They fired Matt Rule. Steve Wilks takes over. He does a decent job with Carolina and then isn't retained for Frank Reich, who's fired, halfway through the season, maybe a little more, a little less than halfway through the season. Steve Wilks then does the year. He's got the 1 year as the Arizona Cardinals head coach on his resume after Cliff Kingsbury. He's got this situation in San Francisco. And talking to a couple of people around the league yesterday, just because it was going around in a couple of group texts I have. I'm not there in San Francisco to know, but it sounds like it was looked more of as a stopgap type of defensive coordinator situation anyway. I don't know the details there, but that seemed to be a consensus among people that I was talking to. The defense played its best game of the postseason in the Super Bowl. And maybe it stings because you were that close, because let's put it this way. San Francisco plays its best game of the postseason on defense in the Super Bowl. They still lose because it looked like Logan Ryan may have slipped up or just lost his footing. He was 33 out there. Again, San Francisco 49ers legend Logan Ryan. But it looked like Logan Ryan, at least he was the closest defender in coverage on the final touchdown to Hardman, corn dog. If they don't have the 3rd and 6 blitz, if Shanahan doesn't have to freak out and call the timeout on second down, they probably win that game, even if they muff the punt, they miss the extra point, because the defense is just playing so well. Now, Mahomes, he's perfect in these situations where he has to come down by at least 7 or come back down by at least 7 in a game-winning situation. In playoff scenarios, he has been perfect thus far. So I don't know if Wilks still has his job if they win the Super Bowl or not. It would be a hell of a lot harder to fire him, especially with the way that defense was playing. But it just was an accumulation of in-game mistakes in the Super Bowl, Lucas, that make me think that's the biggest reason why he's not there today. Now, the Vrabel thing is interesting. Did you see what Shanahan said? And I had to double check to make sure it wasn't an Onion headline, but it sounded like he was just poking fun at his buddy Robert Saleh, the former defensive coordinator, now the head coach of the Jets. He said he didn't want a defensive coordinator with a lot of energy, which made me think, oh, okay, immediately not Vrabel. But then apparently he made a crack on the conference call about, look at Saleh now. He didn't have a lot of energy.
Not as animated as he once was.
Not as animated watching the New York Jets on offense. Who among us? 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Vidal in the F&M Bank chat says, Wilkes is out, but tell me that defense didn't look electric. No, it's as impressed as I was with them at any point. The defense was a little less than this year in San Francisco, at least less than what their standard has been, and they came up in a huge spot. But they came up just a fraction short in overtime. Jason is calling us from Murfreesboro next.
Hey, guys. I want to say in the past 3 years, I guess it'll be the fourth year now, because as a coordinator, 3 times in a row now, we still made it to the NFC Championship games all 3 times. We got to keep one. We can't just keep throwing them away every time. I think if we would have had the Miko Ryans again this year, we would have had that Super Bowl. But my thing is, the very last play of the game, it looks like a little bit of confusion. Why did they call a timeout and reset and just look to see what they had set up for that last play before they just let them call that, That's all I have to say, guys.
Appreciate the call. Yeah, it's a question that Shanahan has gotten a lot. People have taken both sides. And again, did it feel like Romo didn't know the overtime rules because he didn't really clarify until very, very late. Like the ball felt like it was being snapped as Romo was telling us why the clock didn't necessarily matter in that situation because there's no 2-minute warning in the playoff overtime. Anyway, 615-737-1045. You can jump in. The process of hiring Bill Callahan. I'm going to do that a million times. Tajay Spears, Tajay Sharp. Either way. We're talking about the most important hire that Brian Callahan made. Bill, coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We're going to get into what your new OC had to say about Will Levis here in just a little bit. Assistant coaches, though, announced in full earlier this week. Bill Callahan, the most important name on that list. Father of Brian, former NFL, former college head coach, best offensive line coach going in the game, according to many people, the vast majority of people around the league. A legitimate difference maker and a wealth of experience for his son, the new head coach of the Titans, to pull from. You're going to hear from Brian on hiring Bill here in just a second. You can jump in on the phones if you want, 615-737-1045. What did you like most about what you heard yesterday? If you disliked anything that you heard yesterday, we'd be happy to take those calls too. Mark in Nashville is next.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. I just wanted to comment that Wilkes is getting beat up pretty good, and I feel like Shanahan lost that game in the third quarter when he got away from the run game. They had 4 3-and-outs in a row, and he didn't run the ball once, and the running game was working in the first half. I think that's where they lost the game, and it didn't have anything to do with Wilkes.
Well, I don't think it didn't have anything to do with Wilkes. Again, there's plenty of – Shanahan didn't have his best performance, but Steve Wilkes – arguably put them in more jeopardizing situations.
What, are we just talking about overtime?
Is that what he was referencing specifically,
no,
overtime?
I'm asking you.
Oh, with Wilkes? I think that the decision to send a zero blitz at Patrick Mahomes in the overtime is as jeopardizing a decision as was made in that Super Bowl.
Sure. What about the decision to take the ball? Or the decision with the run game?
I think you can go back.
I
really do think, Lucas, you can go back and forth. It's not college football, and I understand why college football you defer. Either way.
Let me ask you this. Who did a better job? Who did their job better on Sunday? Steve Wilkes or Kyle Shanahan?
It's a good question.
Because I think it is Steve Wilkes, 100%.
It's definitely more even.
Imagine telling a 49ers fan, telling Kyle Shanahan, Pat Mahomes, 4 quarters, 1 touchdown. Do you win or lose?
Well, he watched it, and then he fired the guy. So, I mean, you can't imagine telling Kyle Shanahan witnessed it and then fired the guy.
I'm saying before the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
If you ask Kyle Shanahan, you hold Mahomes, your defensive coordinator and his defense holds Mahomes to 1 touchdown through 4 quarters. Do you have enough to win? Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can outscore 1 touchdown from Pat Mahomes in all of regulation. I think Steve Wilkes did his job far better than Kyle Shanahan on Sunday.
No,
I don't think it's close.
Can't. Now you're going to extremes. It's not far better.
I don't think it's close.
You don't think it's close?
No. I think the guy who held Pat Mahomes to 1 touchdown did a better job.
Not the guy who did well again. I mean, he did well against the Kansas City Chiefs defense that had been the best unit for the Kansas City Chiefs all year long. I think they're pretty evenly matched there. There is not a huge gulf between the job that Steve Wilkes and Kyle Shanahan did in that Super Bowl, to me, truly, because they both had unenviable tasks, and they both put themselves in position to get to overtime. There were decisions that were made throughout the course of the game and into the overtime. It's a 6-hour football game, all right? They got some stuff wrong, and the guy on the other side is the hardest thing in the world to stop. So I'm sympathetic towards Steve Wilkes, but you're not gonna convince me that he did that much better of a job than did Kyle Shanahan when his decisions were arguably, and I don't even think it's arguable, were as impactful, if not the most impactful, to the reason why that team lost that game. And here's the thing that we don't know, Lucas, because here's a part of this that, whether it's Vrabel and the dynamic between him and Amy Adams-Strunk that was kind of roiling under the surface that not a lot of us knew about until such time as it was thoroughly reported. And you started to hear more and more rumblings. Did Kyle Shanahan and Steve Wilkes get along? Like, what was the working dynamic? Is this, is that timeout and the frustration that he showed on that timeout about the situation or about Wilkes and having talked about something like this before?
I definitely disagreed with the blitz, especially in that moment on that 3rd down.
UW says, if Steve Wilkes were palm-toned, he would have a job. I think that Steve Wilkes has been as big a victim of the NFL's racially impacted hiring practices as anybody not named Jim Caldwell. I think Jim Caldwell just got tired of being brought in for interviews to satisfy a Rooney Rule or having their interview announced to satisfy a Rooney Rule requirement just to be told that, no, thank you, we'll move to the other guy, and sometimes not even get interviewed. Wasn't Wilkes a part of the Brian Flores lawsuit? I know Hugh Jackson was too, which was an imperfect messenger, shall we say.
Yeah, if I'm Brian Flores, Hugh, now, please.
No. Can you imagine Hugh Jackson getting on the phone, calling Brian Flores, being like, Brian, my guy, thank you for standing up. Thank you for standing on this. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Thank you for going on First Take and calling the NFL's racially discriminating hiring practices, putting them on blast. I'd like to join your cause. And then there's just a little bit of silence on the other end of the phone.
No, he has like a bag of chips that he's crumpling up to the phone. No, you're breaking up, Hugh. I can't hear you.
What was that? You're filing a lawsuit? Good luck with that.
After going 11-44 as a head coach.
God.
Yeah, Steve Wilkes was a part of that.
So I'm certainly not going to dismiss that point. That's something that the NFL has been trying to figure out. Well, how hard they've been trying to figure it out versus NFL owners reportedly this year being upset with the San Francisco 49ers diversity in hiring practices because they're benefiting with draft compensation off of people like Rand Carthon and D'Amico Ryans who get hired away. So silly.
I mean, I know that Kyle Shanahan had the challenge of going up against that Chiefs defense. Like, I get that argument. I just don't know how you can say that he did a better job in that game than Steve Wilkes. Because Steve Wilkes had just as difficult a task on his end.
No, I'll hear Lucas, you're misunderstanding me. I am willing to hear the argument. What I'm saying is you cannot go to the extreme, and this is something I'm guilty of too, but you can't go to the extreme of Steve Wilkes definitively. A huge gulf between the job that Steve Wilkes did and the job that Kyle Shanahan did.
That's where I'm at.
I just don't think
that's
it's
where
that.
I'm at.
Oh, well, you're entitled to that opinion. I just don't think that's an accurate assessment of how that went down.
Niners 3 of 12 on third down. Chiefs were held to 2 of 6 in the red zone in that game.
That is a crazy stat.
2 of 6. And it was 1 of 6 before the game-winning touchdown.
What was their red zone stats all year long, though? I'm curious to know.
The Niners defense?
No,
or the Chiefs
offense. Because the Chiefs offense scoring has not been you made a fortune this year betting Chiefs unders. Not you specifically, but if you were betting Chiefs unders, you could have made a substantial amount of money. I'm not denigrating Patrick Mahomes and how hard it is to stop him. Again, we know this. He's inevitable. What I'm saying is it's not that big a difference between the missteps that that the Niners defense made versus the missteps that Kyle Shanahan made. All of them combined to lose them a Super Bowl. And Kyle Shanahan's not going to fire himself.
Vidal on the F&M Bank chat. You're right. I mean, it's his prerogative. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he says, Wilkes got you 2 turnovers. You couldn't cash in on him either time.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's not even the point total. If you'd have told Kyle Shanahan that that Mahomes turned the ball over way more than Brock Purdy did, would you have a chance to win that football game? Kyle Shanahan's probably going to look around like something, still have a little bit of 28-3 PTSD and be like, all right, but what happens? What happens to me?
Wilkes lost Dre Greenlaw in that game, and Kyle Shanahan's the one that made the decision to take the ball. And his entire reasoning for it was so that we get the ball third and have the opportunity to win in a sudden death situation, which is completely moot because the Chiefs have said, several Chiefs players
we would have gone for 2.
No, we would have gone for 2.
We would have gone for 2. 615-737-1045 is the number. The new play calling. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. We are going to get to Bill Callahan. Lucas was saying something in my ear. So we'll get to Bill Callahan coming up next, and the hiring process of him. We'll also hear from Brian Callahan on the new play calling process that will work conjunctively with offensive coordinator Nick Holz. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. A coaching change in the NFL as the San Francisco 49ers have fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks after being there for only one season. Kyle Shanahan stating yesterday it was not the right fit. Also a staff change in Knoxville as Josh Heupel will look to replace linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie, who is going back to Michigan, where he came from when Heupel initially hired him. Jean-Marie will join Sharon Moore's staff in Ann Arbor. It's the second position coach hire Heupel will have to make this offseason as running backs coach Jerry Mack departed for the same position with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Nashville Predators homestand continues tonight as they host the Central Division leading Dallas Stars at Bridgestone Arena. Puck drop is set for 7 p.m. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour already. Let's talk about this Titans coaching staff, the play calling process, and your new offensive line coach. Lucas and I are with you for one more hour. Blaine and Mickey coming up at 1 o'clock, 3HL after that. Make sure you hang out. So, with the hirings that have been made, there is none more important than that of the offensive line coach here in Tennessee. There is no positional coach that has a harder job than the offensive line coach here in Tennessee, based on the lack of talent that is currently available to them and how much leg work they still have to do to try and retool that unit. So Bill Callahan, longtime coach, career coach, head coach, college, pros, competed in a Super Bowl with the Raiders, been a position coach in a variety of different places, been a play caller in a variety of different places. He's done just about every job that you need to do in this league in some form or fashion over the course of his tenure. And now he's here in Tennessee. So the value of that is obviously huge. How much he'll be able to salvage what's there versus how much more they're going to add under his guidance and how much better they can get under his guidance is something that remains to be seen. But we do know that this is a pretty unique situation where where the son has hired his father. Jimmy Wyatt yesterday in the press conference, Lucas, I don't know if you heard it, asked Brian Callahan if Bill was currently staying with him.
Yes.
And Brian was very quick to answer, no. He's got his own place. My family's not here, so right now I'm hanging out. Pop's got his own place. We spend enough time together at the facility. We don't need to be bunking together, too.
Was also asked if Bill will refer to him as sir.
Wait, I think that was Nick Suss that asked, have you tried to make him refer to you yet as sir? Which made me laugh. But apparently, no, that is not on the table either. There is a lot of this that is exciting if you're a Titans fan for sure, because he's the best and you got him. And you're the worst with offensive line play. You know, I know that's probably a very broad and general statement. I'm sure there's some statistics that you could cite to me in which the Titans offensive line play hasn't been the worst, but it's been the worst. It's been the worst over the last 2 years. We're all sick of it. So now Bill Callahan, highest degree of difficulty of anybody trying to get anything on the Titans right. It didn't sound like the Browns did them necessarily any favors, but they didn't outright block Brian from hiring Bill, which of course was a hurdle that we would have that we could potentially foresee. And how this dynamic is going to work between the two of them is going to be interesting, because I have to imagine that would be difficult to be deferential to your son in this way. But Bill Callahan has raised a career football coach, football lifer in his son Brian, and I'm sure he's understanding of the way that this job, I know he's understanding of the way that this job needs to be done. So this is Brian talking about the hire of his father, Bill.
There's probably not. It There was a complicated process because it wasn't something that I had anticipated him in the moment, if that's what he wanted to do. I wasn't sure he would be contractually allowed to, and it was a process that we had to work through with the Browns organization, and thankfully they were really, kind is the wrong word. This isn't a kind business, but they were aware enough to know the uniqueness of the situation and allow it to continue to go down that road. So appreciative of that perspective from them and allowing it to happen. But, it wasn't something that initially we thought was going to be the case. And it turned out that we were going to be able to make it work. And, probably one of the coolest moments for me is being able to have that happen. It's been really fun to drive to work with him every day and do those things. It's not something I ever thought would work, truthfully. So to be here with him is a really, really awesome moment for me, both as a son and as a professional, because I know how much he can help us with his knowledge. There really wasn't an interview process. It was more he made the decision he wanted to come here to Tennessee, and we went about trying to make it work.
What's the head coach, assistant coach, son, father dynamic like?
It's been really normal. It's been he's very understanding and of what it means to sit in the chair that I sit in every day, having done it himself. He knows when advice is welcome. He knows when he probably should leave me alone. I know when I should leave him alone on the flip side. But it's just been really fun for us to be able to I said he's got this 16-inch clincher, those softballs, the 16-inch softballs, and he played growing up, and he has one of them in his office, and he came in the office the other day. It was probably about 9:00, and we were kind of finishing some stuff up, and I'm sitting there throwing a softball back and forth as we're talking about some different ideas for something, and so just to have that experience has been really cool, and he just wants to be able to help me and to help this organization win, and that part's been really fun. It's been a really cool experience for me so far.
So that's Titans head coach Brian Callahan speaking on the hiring of his father. Skoronski Skoronski's the most important player in that room, for sure. They're inevitably going to add young, talented pieces that Bill Callahan will have the opportunity to help mold. I wonder, I'm so fascinated to see if he is capable of turning NPF and Dylan Radins into functioning NFL players.
Are those the two that you hold up with the most amount of hope to Bill Callahan? NPF and Radins, where you hold those up and say, please,
do something.
Bill.
It's like what's the movie where the little boy comes back to the soup line, the bread line with the bowl?
Oliver Twist.
More, please.
Please, sir, may I have some more?
Please fix this.
May we have some offensive linemen?
Please, sir, can you help us average just a little more than 2 seconds flat in pass protection with how rarely or how frequently we are allowing pressure to just wreck our quarterbacks. Radins,
because those are both in a similar stage of their career, right?
Well, no, Radins is a contract year. So
sure.
If they turn Radins into a Pro Bowl guard just to have him, get paid $10, $12 million a year what did Nate Davis get? Nate, I think, made somewhere between 10 and 14, I can't remember.
In Chicago?
From the Chicago Bears. Like, what's the going rate for a Pro Bowl caliber guard? Because didn't Nate make the Pro Bowl one year? Either way, he was a solid offensive lineman. He's definitely a run blocker, not a pass protector.
Yeah, not in the same. I mean, him and Radins aren't in the same category.
No. But what I'm saying is, like, what's the going rate for a player, for a starting caliber guard? Because that's what Nate is. He's not a great guard. He's not an all-pro. He's a guard.
He signed a 3-year, $30 million deal.
Okay, so $10 million. If you
could have used him.
Yeah, sure. If you turn Dylan Radins, for example, into a $10 million a year player, that would be the greatest accomplishment on Bill Callahan's resume. This dude, they won't let him play anywhere. unless they absolutely have to. And even then, it's after the guy that had the gambling suspension and is not very good got hurt that he got forced back into action in NPF. Radens is the more interesting one between the two. Nicholas Petit-Frere should be the lighter lift because he's a more talented player. He's played high-level football. He's been a full-time starter in his rookie season. Now, the things that continue to get him beat are a common theme. It's like Andre Dillard late with his hand, NPF, beat by inside pass rush moves. How Callahan corrects those kind of problems is going to be interesting to watch at practices and stuff like that during OTAs and training camp. I wonder, I mean, we did talk about this. Is there any thought at all? Because you have the money to do it. Is there any thought at all as trying to keep Dillard as a backup? Because that would actually be the best thing on Bill Callahan's resume if he turned Andre Dillard into anything that could function at the NFL level. But I'm so done with seeing that human being that my preference would be to jettison him out of this locker room as quickly as humanly possible. If I'm a Titans fan and as somebody who watches them on an everyday basis, I don't want to see him here anymore. But could there potentially be any thought, given that he is under contract, to trying to make that work with a former first-round pick?
Dillard feels like the one that you're most ready to cut ties with, right? If you're the Titans.
Oh, for sure.
More than Brewer, more than any other player in that unit.
More than any other player on that roster.
On the roster, yeah.
Like he's got to go. There should be no thought in trying to salvage what remains. Because what do they would owe, he'd have like a $7 million cap charge if they cut him. I'll look up Andre Dillard's spot track really quick. But long story short, I don't think anybody's interested. I don't think anybody should be interested in trying to make that work. Whether they are or not remains to be seen. But yeah, I'm good with letting that one go. Some things just aren't fixable. So, to the new play calling process and the qualities that made both Nick Holz and Brian Callahan want to coach Will Levis. We'll get to those coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. So you got a new play caller. You got a lot of new things, a lot of bright, shiny new things that you aren't mad about yet. We'll see how long it takes you to get there, if at all. One of those is a play calling, offensive, backgrounded head coach. So we're going to get into that here in just a second. You're going to hear from Holz, the new offensive coordinator, and Callahan on the process of calling plays. But first, it's lunch. I'm hungry. We're very, very close to the Hattie B's Midtown location where Lucas and I got to check out their cool renovated event space. That's I couldn't believe that they bought the Gigi's Cupcakes that they shot those Arakpo commercials at. That was a little bit of Titans history that left with the Gigi's Cupcakes in Midtown. They got swallowed up by the construction. But the new Hattie B's event space is awesome. They had Becky from our sales staff, Lucas and myself, come out and check it out and sample all kinds of phenomenal things like the wings, like the tenders, like the hot chicken sliders, which are my favorite. What was the tray that was to the side of us? It looked like an appetizer, basically like just mac and cheese, chicken, and pickles. It looked delightful. I didn't get any of it, but that and the Jackalope beer. I'm not even a beer drinker, and the Jackalope beer was good. So given that I'm thinking about this and we're not too far from the Hattie B's Midtown location, what can we do, Lucas, at the end of the segment for people?
Every week we do the Feed Your Flock feature, an opportunity to win a catered meal for your business, your party, whatever it might be, a catered lunch for 15 people. So at the end of this segment, about 20 minutes from now, we'll give the cue to call and have the phone at the ready.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Go ahead and download the Hattie B's app while you're at it anyway, because if you win, that's how you'll get the Feed Your Flock feature. And if you don't win, that's how you will order your next meal from Hattie B's. So pick it up and skip the line.
Do you know? Well, they deliver through the app now. This was a revelation for me. I did our friend Lindsay Rowley at Bally Sports and all the Preds broadcast crew had a Super Bowl watch party to help me raise some money for LLS. And they had Hattie B's delivered to the watch party at Jackalope, as a matter of fact. So it was just a nice little treat. And now I'm thinking about hot chicken. But before I can think about hot chicken, we have to think about play calling. So it's a new dynamic. It's the same model that Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan had tremendous success with during their 5 years together, with Callahan as the offensive coordinator of the Bengals and Taylor as the head coach who called the plays for the Bengals. So, given that this is all a bit new, but not really new for Brian Callahan, I think it's a fair question for fans to ask and for me to ask, all right, what does the process exactly look like, and how is this going to work in conjunction with Nick Holz, who is your non-play calling OC?
Quite a bit is the answer. Because of the way that the week operates and the way you build a game plan with the input from the staff and the input from the quarterback, which is sort of the cherry on top of the preparation process as you get to Saturday. Quarterback's going to have a lot of input as to what he likes and where his favorites are. He'll rank the plays as we get ready to go to a game. So, for example, we might have our top 2 plays in 3rd and 2 to 3 and 3rd and 4 to 6. They're going to come off the sheet just like that, especially early in the game until we have to adjust in between series or at the quarter, at the half, however that works. But we have a starting point plan, just like you have we call them openers. Some people call them first 15, but you have a handful of plays in there that you're trying to probe the defense. You're trying to give your guys a chance to get a rhythm going. The quarterback's going to have an input into that portion of the game plan. So the early part of the game, when the calling of the plays is really sort of already done before the game starts. Where good play callers, I think, make their money and where good staffs separate themselves in this league is how quickly you can pivot in the process of a game. Again, whether that's usually in between series or even trying to think about what's coming next. And so the anticipatory part of that process is really, I think, what separates play callers in the league. But as far as the game plan and the early part of the game, it's going to be relatively well set before the game before it even hits Sunday. And so that's how you hope it to be. That's how you want it to be. And then again, where we make our money on Sundays is how quickly we can adjust and pivot and adapt to whatever we're seeing that might be different than we anticipated.
When I referenced earlier that there's a bit of a misconception about play calling, that's what I was talking about. when you hear a head coach say, yeah, play calling's basically done by the time we get to the game. And then it's about, the pivot that you have to make with the nebulous in-game adjustments that you all have been citing for years, but don't actually happen at halftime or anything like that. They happen on an iPad between drives. Or a Surface, I'm sorry. Don't send me a cease and desist, NFL. That is something that I think has been taken for granted in all of this. Brian Callahan, the thing that he needs to know how to do is how to game plan during the week with Nick Holz, and to find somebody who's going to get the best version of the game plan, the play calling menu, the things that they are taking into each individual matchup, and not just the idea of, all right, here's all of the plays that we have. Here's what we're going to teach you during training camp. Here's what we're going to install. You are expected to know this at any given point. So when we call it, you got to be ready to go. It's more fine-tuned than that. It's more specific than that. It's more tedious than that. And it involves far more, even though the result that you see on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays is the actual act of a coach whispering something or yelling something into a microphone and a quarterback executing or not executing a play. The process of play calling is far more detailed for that, and that's why Nick Holz is here to basically be the assistant play caller as much as the offensive coordinator. He said, I'm the same as your standard offensive coordinator. It's just I'm not going to be the one who has the final word on what it is that we're running on game day. What did you make of Holz as the OC? They're definitely different people between Dennard Wilson and Nick Holz.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing, the
drastic difference.
Yeah, difference just in personality, mannerism.
Yeah.
Kind of the way they communicate something. Holz seems a little more laid back, not as intense, not as much of the rah-rah run through a brick wall.
I feel like that's a defensive versus offensive guy thing anyway.
Dennard Wilson steps up and has given us General Patton quotes and attack, and all of those things, which is awesome. And Nick Holz
is deferring to Brian Callahan on a lot of the questions because he's
questions. But it's communication, right? And it's a lot of the same rhetoric we heard from Callahan. It's clear that they're on the same page on a lot of these things, and that it's Callahan's offense. Like there's no, make no bones about it. Like it's Callahan's show, and Holz is talking about taking stuff off his plate, right?
In year one, for sure. But by the end of it, I think the hope, whether Nick Holz has designs on being himself a play-calling head coach or, the next Brian Callahan, whatever the case may be, that there is a degree of this that you have to show, one, that you can do the job, that you can earn the trust. These two have a previous relationship. Apparently, they became very close during their 1 year together in Oakland, with Holtz as a holdover on Jack Del Rio's staff to John Gruden's staff, and then Callahan hired by John Gruden. And of course, having gone to high school together, they're basically contemporaries. I don't think there may not be much of an age difference, but a matter of months between the two.
I believe they're both 39, as is Bo Hardigree, the quarterback's coach.
With that, Holtz and how he earns the trust of Brian Callahan. Remember what Dave Lapham said to us about Brian Callahan. In the same way that you said, make no mistake about it, this is Brian Callahan's baby of the Titans offense. Dave Lapham was on here saying, make no mistake about it. This is Brian Callahan's baby as much as it is Zach Taylor's with the Cincinnati offense. So I don't know if that's like a point where Nick Holtz has to get to and where Brian Callahan started in a similar situation, or it's like, all right, let's build this thing up. Let's see where we are in year one. Let's bring together a variety of different ideas and see where we can find some middle ground and go from there, so that as we earn each other's trust, I am comfortable giving more over to you and making you more involved en route to whatever your career aspirations may be, play calling offensive coordinator for a team, play calling head coach for a team, so on and so forth.
There probably was a lot of growth in that in 4 years together between Callahan and Taylor.
Sure.
Like his voice in the room, I imagine Brian Callahan's had a stronger presence in 2022, 2023, as opposed to 2019 when they first got there.
Well, sure, proof of concept.
And it's a completely incomplete roster, and they're taking over a rough situation. But, Holtz is asked about his approach to his attack on offense, and he immediately deferred to Callahan, right? Yeah, that's probably more of a question for the play caller.
Do you have it?
But I don't have it up. But he said, I think we see it systematically of we want to run good plays into good looks. We want to have the chalk last where we're not going, oh, they made us hot here. We didn't do this. So I guess I kind of defer to him, too, of how he wants to see it and build the offense that way. And then Callahan went on to talk about a time and place on dictating pace and tempo.
It was a good answer. I mean, just basically that we're always going to be attack.
But it'd be interesting to see how Holtz answers that question 2 years from now, if he's still here, instead of immediately deferring to his coach. But that was clear, right, yesterday. This is Callahan's show. Holtz is here in a very supporting role.
So with Holtz, we talked about the three people who are going to have their hands on the quarterback the most, right? It's going to be the head coach, it's going to be the quarterback's coach, and it's going to be Nick Holtz as the offensive coordinator. Levis, we've gone back and forth on this, and I ended up getting into a way too long debate about this with the people that streamed the primetime show last night on what Will Levis actually is and how much better he should get. Will Levis is what in Titans fans' minds beyond their starting quarterback for 2024? Will Levis is the future of the franchise? Well, no. Right now, he's currently the present. What he does will determine whether he is the future. Will Levis is definitively a good quarterback.
Will Levis is the thing that will define the success that you have as a football team over the next 3 years.
Sure. But what is he right now? What is he right now? What can he stand to be? What can he turn into is a question that we can't answer because obviously this is a part of that process. But what is he right now? He's not the best quarterback in his division. He's somebody who plays with great passion and great intensity. Traits that you will hear from Nick Holtz on from the or about the quarterback here in just a second. But I kind of go back to Lucas. I think as a market, including media, and I lump myself into this, I think we are way more in on Will Levis than the rest of the football consuming and film watching country seems to be. And I'm trying to figure out whether that's a mistake on their part because they're too far removed from the situation or because we're too close to it that we think, or at least it seems that Titans fans see something in Will Levis that he's not yet, which is fine. He's a super talented player. There's a reason he was a borderline first-round pick and could have been a first-round pick had a trade situation worked itself out.
If you were to poll 100 people and blend in Titans local media, and you, Teresa, and Glennon, and PK, and everybody, as well as just any national person you can think of, and then sprinkle in, Jeff Howe, people that cover the Patriots, and then just people from around the league, 100 people, local, national, and in between, and you polled them on Will Levis, I bet it'd be all over the place, right?
Oh, I would. So like out of 100 people, I bet there'd be a 55-45 split, maybe even closer.
Right, exactly. It'd be very close to 50-50, and that's probably about right. Like that kind of tells you everything right now.
Oh, sure. With his own areas of improvement removed from the deficiencies that the team around him caused, there are plenty of arguments for and against Will Levis. All that to say that these three individuals, quarterback coach Bo Hardigree, Brian Callahan as the head coach, and the offensive play caller and the offensive coordinator Nick Holtz, they have to be all in, and will be all in on Will Levis as the present. And the qualities that they have to start with are the qualities that you absolutely baseline need to be able to work with a starting level quarterback, which is what Nick Holtz laid out yesterday at his introductory press conference.
So, starting with Will, last year in Jacksonville, we weren't really in the first round quarterback market, so I hadn't really watched very much of him. And then starting to watch him, when I was with the Jags as, opponent crossover film, the first thing that kind of jumped off is obviously, the arm talent. And then the second thing I would say that really jumps off is the toughness, right? I think we talk about for quarterbacks, the three things we're looking for is decision-making, accuracy, and toughness. And you saw all that, and I'm sure, he would say he probably wants to improve in some of those areas and things like that, but you could see that baseline there for him of that those skills are there. And so it was, I think it's a reason what made this job probably so attractive to Brian and probably the rest of us.
So he's definitely intense. He's definitely competitive. Definitely got high-level traits. Has the work ethic. How they help him put it all together is how their success or failures as coaches is going to be defined. And, of course, the success or failure of the Titans franchise in the immediate is going to be defined.
And who are we saying will have the most to do with that? I mean, is it Callahan just straight up? Or do we need to be talking more about Bo Hardigree, who probably is going to be with Will Levis more than any other coach?
There is nobody closer to their quarterback, if the thing goes right, than the quarterback's coach. Because even if you are Brian Callahan as a head coach and an offensive-minded head coach and a play caller and all these different things, you just have a million different things going on. So percentage of time, yes, you know that that's your quarterback. That's the person that it's most beneficial to have, in your corner. And he said, Brian Callahan said yesterday that he's been continuing to keep in contact with Levis. They talked to him after he got back from Vegas and stuff like that. They apparently Callahan was jealous of the golf lessons that he got from Phil Mickelson, Will Levis. I didn't ask him if he got any poker tips from Levis coming back. By the way, just as an aside, think about how far the NFL has come from not allowing Tony Romo or Marshawn Lynch to attend a fantasy football convention in Las Vegas to letting Will Levis play televised poker. That happened in like 6 years. That's wild. Anyway.
Callahan has not been shy about saying out loud, the relationship between me and Will Levis is the most important relationship in the building.
He's consulting. Well, he is keeping him updated, if not outright consulting him on coaching hires that he's making. He is informing him the entire way through about, this is the hire that we're making for your quarterbacks coach. This is why I believe that he's going to be the best person for you. This is his background, things like that. That has been important to Brian Callahan. It's a lot easier to do that in the offseason than it is in the regular season when you're spending the vast majority of time in the quarterback room, and that person is Bo Hardigree. So the answer is Bo Hardigree. That's going to have the biggest impact on him, because that, by percentage of time spent, is going to be the person he sees every day, probably in some form or fashion, 7 days a week, talks to on the most frequent basis, unless Brian Callahan is going to go above and beyond to make sure that he's having daily conversations with Will Levis that are on the same plane. Now, how that's going to work, we'll see. But based on how this stuff goes, nobody knows these guys better than their position coaches. Maybe I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know if I'm live producing the show as we are wont to do from time to time. I wonder if you know how Callahan did that Locked On Bengals podcast as a coordinator in Cincinnati? I wonder if they'd let us talk to the assistant coaches, like with Greg, like with Cosell, to kind of understand a little more, because I don't even have to be a part of the conversation. This is not something I've talked to the Titans about, so I'd be curious to see what their feedback on something like that would be. But I love the idea of Greg kind of peeling back some of the layers on some of these coaches, because in particular the quarterback's coach, Bill Callahan, I don't know if that's something that we can accomplish on the install, but that's something that just came into my mind that I would like to find out about. So we'll send some emails after the show.
What did y'all talk about yesterday?
Talked about the Super Bowl. Talked about Steve Wilkes. Talked about what you mentioned. And, Greg is not so much of a in-game decision strategy type of person as much as he is an X's and O's. Here's where the matchup won. Here's where the matchup failed type. But we did spend a lot of time talking about Callahan, and in particular the lengths that Will Levis and the Titans are going to have to go to achieve just even competing with the rest of the AFC right now. And Greg's not been shy about saying for the past couple of years that the Titans are due for a philosophical shift. He's been pretty diplomatic about the way that he said it, but he I think is pleased to see them heading in the direction that they are.
So don't run the ball 16 times for 9 yards.
Ideally not. And at least if you're going to do that, let us know so we can prepare something else for the podcast that week.
Or just find something else to do on Sunday.
Yeah, that too. 615-737-1045. Oh, it's almost the end of the show. Last call for phone calls. We'll do that coming up next. Welcome back to the show. So we were just talking about Callahan, Levis, Nick Holz, Bo Hardigree, all the new names you're going to learn about your coaching staff, all the names you've probably been learning over the past couple of weeks as the hires have been made. We got a couple of tweets responding to our discussion. DJ Adam TN says Will Levis can be a top 15 quarterback in 2024 with Callahan and the right pieces around him. Well, sure. The only reason I'm not outright dismissive of him, of that, but it's just a bunch of words that don't actually mean anything. Can Will Levis be a top 15 quarterback if they get all the things right around him? Well, yeah, that's sure. The process of that is the only thing that we're going to be able to evaluate in the meantime, and I don't know what the results are going to be. If he's a top 15 quarterback, we won't find out until the end of the year, will we? So that you have that belief is not wrong. You are 100% Titans fans absolutely should be optimistic about Will Levis. Let me start there first and foremost. But how long did it take Josh Allen to turn? Josh Allen's a different kind of a scenario here. Josh Allen's the most physically talented quarterback in professional football right now. Mahomes is the best, but Josh Allen is the most physically gifted. We were talking about Josh Allen's accuracy problems until what, year 3? And he was a playmaker. They could find ways to move the ball with him, not just through the air, but on the ground, and of course the highlight reel throws and stuff like that. But it's not about highlight reel throws to me for Will Levis. Josh Allen is a fun comparison because rocket launcher arm. Mahomes, you wouldn't compare anybody to him, but because he can make unbelievable off-scheduled plays. But I want Will Levis to be as much Brock Purdy as I do Patrick Mahomes, if that makes any sense. Do you understand what I'm saying with that? That Brock Purdy and the ability, because Mahomes did this in the Super Bowl with success. Lucas, can you tell me how many plays over 20 yards the Kansas City Chiefs had in the Super Bowl?
Oh, I'd say 2 or 3.
3 total. A 52-yarder to Hardman, a 25-yard completion, and I think Kelsey had a 22-yarder in the second half. For the most part, he's reading the blitz and taking what the defense gives him. He's managing the situation, managing the clock. He is a game manager, Patrick Mahomes. And that is a skill that he's developed over the course of the last 2 years. It's a skill. It's not a stigma. I want Will Levis to have as much Brock Purdy to his game as I want him to have highlight reel throws. The highlight reel throws are fun and easy because it's like Senior Bowl highlights. You can put them on Twitter. People, drool over them, and they don't actually mean anything for the purposes of winning a football game. They can help. It's a weapon, sure. It's a tool. But the development is not just about him being able to make every throw on the field. Okay, well, how does he handle a zero blitz on a 3rd and 6 in a playoff game situation where he's got to have it and he's looking at the defense? Maybe they sink, maybe they blitz. You don't know that. Can he change things at the line of scrimmage? Can he read things successfully? All the stuff that goes beyond just the big play that you want the quarterback to make. So I'm not taking issue with the tweet, and I'm totally cool with people being hype about the idea of Will Levis taking the next steps here. But just understand that the next steps have a ton of layers to them. And I think it's unrealistic to think that it's all going to get done in one season or one off season into one season. Are you doing high school basketball tonight? No? Why do I think you're doing high school basketball tonight? When are you doing high school basketball?
No, we are done with high school hoops on the zone. State championship stuff will start up in a few weeks.
Why did you lie to me and tell me you were doing my TV 30 this week?
You are misremembering. Don't know what you're talking. You're pulling up year-old articles about Zakai Ziegler being
that was
hurt.
Really bad.
I think you're
that
losing it.
That might be the worst moment I've had.
I think you're losing it.
That was a really bad one. No, you definitely told me you were doing my TV 30.
Maybe you dreamt it. I got nothing for you, buddy.
Are you lying to me?
I got nothing for you.
Did you get canceled on?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. It seems genuine. Polls, please.
Not now, Jenny. I'm on the radio. Buck Rising gave me a job. Said something about a poll update. Hope that wasn't at that club where you became a folk singer. Anyway, Buck Rising's producer and correspondent has the final poll update. I'm not a smart man, but I know who Lucas Panzica is.
Tell people what you just said in my ear. Damn you.
Now you're hearing voices? Now you're hearing voices that... Dude, get a grip. Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the most trusted Ford dealer in the South. What is the best thing that you heard from the Titans presser yesterday? John liked the... he said General Wilson, quoting General Patton, talking about Dennard Wilson.
That's a fun name. That's a fun nickname for a defensive coordinator. General Wilson.
Got a good ring to it.
General Booty. Also, no, I'm not giving up this fight. You told me that the My TV 30 game got pulled. I'm not losing my mind.
You keep telling yourself that. Kenneth says he liked the attacking mentality. Very different approach than Vrabel's zone coverage clamp in the red zone style, he said. Goody just liked everything that Dennard Wilson had to say. What is the worst thing that you heard from the Titans presser yesterday? Most of the replies are national media screaming at each other over the coaches.
I don't care how they do it in New York and Philadelphia. Nobody likes those people. Nobody likes those people. Why do you want to be those people? Why are you starting a fight with one another in this press conference? New guy from Sports Illustrated, who I swear to God I'll learn your name at some point. And PK. Chill the bleep out, all right? We don't need your cat fighting. Not just, Lucas, because the exchange in the press conference is minimal. The only thing that makes it cringeworthy is because it's happening at all. The stuff that carried out into the media room and then into the hallway afterwards, like a bunch of high schoolers, I would like to say that we're better than this, but apparently we're not.
Which NFL team will look the most different in 2024? Joseph says, I'd actually say the Titans. There are several changes that I feel have been made to completely change how they look on the field, but we won't see it until the season starts.
The Titans are a good argument for sure, but Washington is the answer.
Did Steve Wilkes deserve to be fired? 80% say no.
I don't think so. But again, I don't know all the inner workings of the San Francisco 49ers, the interpersonal relationship with Shanahan, so perhaps there's some more stuff going on there.
Those are the polls, but we have one more thing to do today.
Oh, my God, did I not give away the feed your flock?
Caller number 5 now, 615-737-1045, will get the $225 value Feed Your Flock pack for a catered lunch from Hattie B's, the best hot chicken in Nashville, to your local business. Be sure to get the Hattie B's app to be able to take advantage. Call now.
What are you doing with your time tonight instead of a My TV 30 game?
Prepping for the show tomorrow. Well, I don't know. I don't plan that far ahead, Buck.
Well, you better, because you're me tomorrow. Well, if you're me tomorrow, then maybe you shouldn't plan at all. Maybe you should bring up a year-old box score and read it on the air to scare the holy bleep out of people about Zakai Ziegler. Have a great weekend. I'm off till Tuesday. Lucas has got you on Friday and Monday. We'll do prime time tonight, and then you get a blessed respite from me for a little while, except for coming up next, because I'm on Blaine and Mickey. See you guys.